Good morning, good afternoon. My name is Robert Schmid, Deloitte Digital's Chief IoT Technologist, also known as Mr. IoT. This week on Coffee with Mr. IoT, I am talking with Neal Hagermoser. Did I say this right, Neal? Did I get this right? I mean, I'm Austrian, I should know this, but did I get this right?
Robert, you did get it right. That is how you say it, Hagermoser.
Neal, it's great to have you on the show. You work for PTC, Thingworx, one of our key alliance partners, and I've titled it today, Let's Mix Up Our Realities. What is it with reality and augmented reality and virtual reality? That's your world, isn't it?
It is the world we live in, yeah. So one of the things that we've been playing with is, IoT is about data. We've been collecting data for the last couple of years. Now we need a way of visualizing that data beyond just flat 2D websites. So the idea of having augmented reality and actually placing that data onto, placing the CAD and the other, sensor data directly onto an object really makes it so much easier for those technicians out there and all the various use cases for it.
So for someone who hasn't seen this, just simply explain this. What do you mean placing data onto objects? What does this look like?
Yeah.
Do I have to have some fancy glasses, or how does this work?
So augmented reality is different than virtual reality. So virtual reality is all about you're totally immersive. You don't see anything around you but what's digitally represented. Augmented reality is taking a digital representation of maybe a number or the actual CAD model of an item and placing it into the actual physical reality in the correct space and location. You don't need a special device, though, which is really interesting because you can do this with your phone, with your iPad or an Android tablet, which is a really cool effect.
So basically, I look at a machine, and I can see on that machine then, I can put my iPad and I point it at the machine, and then it doesn't show me just the machine, but it shows me actually on the machine data, real life data about the machine, and that's actually the IoT component. Did I get that right?
It's one machine. There'll be hundreds of machines. So being able to directly link this machine to its data without having to match serial numbers, and it's so much easier.
How does the thing know which machine it's looking at? Because they all look the same.
They looked at, so our technology uses what we call a Thingmark, which is it's a unique barcode identifier, but, there's other ways of doing kind of identification through geolocation, and other beacons could all be used in theory to actually target and identify that machine. So beyond just, that serial number, there's a lot of data about it.
You have one of those Thingmarks handy to show us? They're kind of cool. It's kind of funny when I walk around nowadays and people give me a demo, I'm like, oh, that's a Thingmark.
I do have a Thingmark. Let me grab it from my bag. So this Thingmark here, which has, right now this is our logo, but and around it's the unique barcode. And what you get actually from this is you uniquely identify this item. You're able to pull up an experience, which is kind of our way of saying an AR app. And then this is actually your X, Y, and Z and scale in a physical coordinate space.
Oh, wow, that's fascinating. So is this like a cool looking version of a QR code?
It is, and it's kind of a cool looking version. The idea of Euphoria technology allows you to customize this to be your company logo, so it can match the feel of your product. So it's not as obtrusive as a traditional QR code would be. It can fit with your corporate branding, which is really key to make this a viable product out there.
So the last year by the way, in my title I talked about mixed reality too. What's the difference between mixed reality and augmented reality in your mind?
In my mind, there's not a huge difference between mixed reality and augmented reality. I mean, you have the idea of augmenting data onto. It is augmented reality. It's the idea of taking digital data and putting it onto that physical objects that are out there. There's not a huge difference, at least in the space that we're in.
So basically what you're saying is I don't need glasses to do augmented reality. I can do this on my phone, or I can do this with a tablet, and I can overlay that and see it that way. So that's really cool. And secondly, it's sort of like this, give me data that's relevant for me about something real. Could be digital data, could be social, could be any kind of different thing. It's very, very cool. So I have to ask you, where were you guys when Pokemon Go came around, and what did that mean for you? I mean, maybe for people who don't know what Pokemon Go is, just tell us about it. And but just I'm curious how that impacted you guys.
Yeah, so Go came out last summer in the July timeframe, and we had just had our big show demoing and showing the world our augmented reality, technology that was out there and our new tool set. A month later, Pokemon Go comes out. It's a game where you can go and it's using geolocation to make digital representations appear in the physical space. You catch the Pokemon. That comes out. It becomes a #1 app on the app stores. Everyone's playing it, and then we're getting a ton of press, and because we just released an industrial, use case, and it's really key. We got to ride that wave a little bit over the summer. CTOs were seeing this and seeing like augmented reality is real. It's not, a future thing. Their kids were out there playing Pokemon Go. I mean, I was out there playing Pokemon Go.
You're playing Pokemon Go.
I was on vacation when the app came out, and I played it all week because it was so fun to kind of show and explain to people, this is what augmented reality is. You can see it, fun use case here, but imagine how it could change the industrial space.
So are we going to have, you talked about the annual show, it's called Liveworks. It happens in May. I believe it's 23rd to the 25th of May in Boston. Is that correct?
I believe those dates are correct, yes.
Yeah. Actually, I'm going to speak there, so come and join us. But are we going to have Pokemons on the show floor?
I imagine, it's at the convention center in Boston, so I imagine there are Pokemon that live at the convention center that we will be able to catch, but there's a lot of interesting demos.
Together and catch some Pokemons together.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Moving from Pokemons to some industrial stuff, tell me, give me one of your favorite mixed reality examples from not Pokemons, but to actual industrial use cases.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite examples has to do with servicing components. So we had the customer had, their products get shipped all over the world, and they don't really understand, the technicians, kind of how to repair the units, and they want to push the work from having to ship out a technician to repair the unit to actually letting the customer actually repair the unit. So this air filter, instead of having to send a technician to actually do and just unclip 3 clips, take the filter out and put a new filter back in, they were able to create an experience, and this is something they were doing where they were, a customer would be able to scan it, see how to replace that filter, and then they just had to ship the filter. So it became a lot easier for that customer to do the work, and they didn't have to send as many field technicians out, which is a big problem that we're seeing with a lot of our customers, is as the technician force ages, that they just are running out of field technicians, and that knowledge is going away. So we want to document that and make it easier for people to use that stuff.
So it's actually not just data that you overlay, like temperature or whatever goes on with whatever you're looking at, but it's also contextual data about what you're looking at and how to fix it and how to change it. It's almost like, why would I need a manual going forward when I can just point at it and it tells me something about it? Is that stuff you're doing also?
Absolutely. One of the things that we're, our background at PTC is in CAD. So for a lot of these customers, they've designed out their product in our CAD software and other CAD softwares, and we understand CAD better than most, and we're able to use that data and then augment it on now with our new stuff. And so you get this great rich history of, we understand CAD and three-dimensional geometry. We now are understanding augmented reality. Combining those two together, plus IoT data, about you really create this whole service use case journey where, anyone whose first time they see a machine can get a step-by-step procedure augmented on to that machine and understand which screws to undo, what order, and what not to do in the same context.
If you're just joining us, I am Robert Schmid, Deloitte Digital's Chief IoT Technologist, and you're watching Coffee with Mr. IoT. Today, I am talking to Neal Hagermoser, and we're talking about all kinds of realities, mostly mixed and augmented reality. Neal, one of the things that I find so fascinating about your company is how you managed to go from you started out in product lifecycle management and sort of like the early parts of products, right? And then you moved into sort of the area of what goes on with the product today, and now you're kind of keeping the product with you actually through its whole life cycle until it sort of gets recycled, with connecting it to support and when it lives out in the field. That's really exciting. What do you think? I mean, do you see companies actually really noticing how they have to change their interaction with customers because now they are in contact with their customers even once the product leaves them?
Yeah, that's definitely a use case. We see customers want to, and they've wanted to, keep that relationship going. I mean, those big box stores that would just buy this equipment and put it out there, and then, no one's calling back home, and the customer has no insight on who's actually buying the product. Our customers, have wanted that connection to their customers, and now they have a way of, doing that, tying it back into their back-end systems that we've been helping them provide, the Windshells, the CAD, Creos, the Servigistics, and enabling a whole life cycle. And that's been a really key kind of use case that our customers see themselves maturing up the curve of having a connected product.
I mean, it's a great place to be, right? To actually know what your customers are doing with your product is really, it's informing everything. It's informing you with support. It's informing you with your product development and everything. Neal, I got a personal question for you. What was your very first IoT project you did? I'm just curious.
So my first IoT project was on connected cattle. So
I'm sorry, say that again.
Connected cattle.
Cows.
So cows. Yep.
Okay.
So, as people know, there's a big movement towards organic beef. Well, in organic beef, you don't just give them antibiotics like they would do traditionally. So what they do is they want to identify a sick cow as soon as possible. So they actually design these pills that the cows would swallow that would talk over Bluetooth, and they'd monitor the cow's health remotely. So a minute a cow started acting abnormally, they could separate it from the herd and make sure that it wasn't getting the rest of the herd sick.
Wow. How long did that take to get that done?
It really, I think, designing the pill probably took a while, but the actual connectivity and building the applications to actually monitor, that was, a couple months. It's a fairly quick development cycle to get that out the door.
And do you happen to know how many cows are being monitored that way now?
I don't know how many cows are being monitored. I know that they were, started out with a couple hundred that they were monitoring, but I don't know where they are today.
So then you had farmers looking at dashboards built in Thingworx?
You had farmers looking at dashboards, pulling them up on their iPads. Farming, agriculture in general has shifted recently to heavy data intensive in the last 10, 15 years. And the more data they can have, the better decisions they can make. I mean, we have several customers in the IoT space that are all about, water management, crop rotation, and just let's make sure we're using the land to the absolute maximum and, minimizing our resource load.
It's kind of funky when you think about it. That cow example just fascinates me because in a way, you probably know more about the cow I eat than about me. You're going to monitor the health of the cow to a much more intensive level than we actually monitor ourselves, which is kind of odd.
Well, you are your eat, so you do have to monitor the cow, I guess.
That's true.
You want to make sure. So it's just, IoT is an interesting space, and augmented reality is just that next level of let's take all these different use cases that are out there, all the different everything from agricultural to oil and gas, and all those kind of traditional industries that have been doing the same thing for so long, and we see IoT disrupted them, and then they're really quick to adopt AR while they're in this sense of disruption.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So we talked about your virtual reality or augmented reality use case. We talked about IoT use cases in the industry and in agriculture. What do you do with mixed reality in your personal life? I'm just curious. You're so far into this, and what do you do? What do you do, and what would you like to do?
So one thing I have done is I have a fairly large garden. I live in New England, so we have a decent growing season. And so what we've done is I've connected up the garden. So I'm collecting all the water sensors and soil monitoring. So that I've connected that up, and now I've actually started to create augmented reality experiences to kind of display gauges over each garden bed. So you could say, is this garden bed, what's growing there? When was it planted, and collecting it? Because when it's just dirt when I'm going to start planting in a month, it's hard to see, what did I plant there? So versus keeping the notebook like I used to do, now I actually am keeping all the records in an augmented reality experience. So
That's
it's
awesome.
just fun to show the neighbors.
That's really interesting. I wish I would have known this, and I would have asked you to show us some pictures.
Yeah.
Does your family look at it too? Does your wife look at it also? Or is it just?
Yeah, my wife is actually more the gardener. I'm more of the just adding technology because it gives me an excuse to do it.
By the way, I just looked it up. We have about more than 4 millions of cows are connected with ear tags today. So we didn't quite get to the egg that you swallow, but research shows there's 4 millions of cows with ear tags. So you do it at home, you do it on flower beds.
Yep.
Where do we think where are we going to be in 5 years from now? What do you think?
I think we're going to have a really changed environment with the way people, especially in the service industry, when people go and you're going to repair a product. Long gone are the days of the service manuals that are hundreds of pages long that have to be translated into 17 languages and shipped all over the world and then sit on a shelf. We're going to be moving to this world where we're going to identify the product through, a Thingmark or something like it. You're going to pull up the experience instructions on exactly how to repair it because the machine collected the data on what went wrong, and it knows. So that it's just going to be a very different world there. Training is going to be different. When you're going to go out on a oil rig, you're going to go and do some training in a lab with either a virtual reality headset or an augmented reality headset. So you don't have to do as much training on the actual device. You can go into a situation knowing so much more than you would before.
So I'm a company and I do a bunch of manuals. I have products, I need to write lots of manuals. Now you tell me I got to switch to augmented reality. How do I go about this? Is this like, do I have to hire a bunch of Hollywood producers, or what do I need to do, and how different is it?
It's a little different, but it's not huge. I mean, for anyone who is doing kind of any video production, so if you're a product manufacturer and you have the product CAD, you've already designed out this product in CAD. So one of the powers of our technology is we just take the CAD that you already have, optimize it for this AR view. So you're not actually having to create anything new as far as drawings like you would before. We're just able to use that raw CAD. And then if you were doing any kind of video step-by-step, let me show you how I take off the air filter, it's just as simple to do in a quick drag and drop tool to move those components around. Doing augmented reality, especially with some of our technology with publishing it, it sits there on the cloud to be pulled down in real time. So as that technician's using that and we changed a part or we changed procedure, there's no fear of him having an old manual that's out of date that doesn't have the right maintenance procedure in there. So there's a huge advantage there.
Yeah, that's big. I mean, to know that you have the latest and the greatest manual, that's just an amazing piece of functionality for you. And so what you're saying is that for your studio, I think you changed the name actually now, I'm sorry for using
Thingworx Studio now.
Thingworx Studio, thank you. The Thingworx Studio gives you tools to easily drag and drop and start this augmented reality experience. I still believe that there has to be some sort of new skill around user journeys and really understanding the user in a new way than from writing a manual. I mean, it's a different experience when you look something on video than when you read, isn't it?
Yeah, it definitely is a different experience. And I think in general, we are, as technology companies, moving towards understanding our position, looking at ourselves in the view of the customer more so than we ever were before. Gone are the days of the really ugly engineering create views of a dashboard. People look at data differently. And when people are designing applications, they're taking in, we have UI designers and human factors engineers who come in and look at how's my customer actually going to use the product and how is we going to design it so not only is it usable for them, but it's an enjoyable experience. So there is definitely that shift, but I think we're just riding it as part of that shift that's already taking place in the industry in general.
Yeah, I gotta admit, bit of a selfish kind of plug here too, right? Because we have all our design studios that actually specifically focus on AR, VR, and the experience. But I think it's a shift, but it's a doable shift, and I think it's a shift we're all going under. It's a little bit to me like how, if you listen to Facebook, they talk about the shift from pictures to video. Even myself, I started learning iMovie much more because I realized movies are just so much more engaging. So I think we'll all shift that way. Last question, Neal. What haven't we talked about that we should have talked about?
I think the only thing that I would kind of bring up, and this will be my own little plug, is that if someone's interested in learning about AR, augmented reality, and PTC's kind of play in the augmented reality space, I would direct them to go to studio.thingworx.com, where they could, just join our trial program and actually start playing around with ThingWorx Studio today, so that they could start actually baking their own augmented reality experiences in minutes.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for plugging this, studio.thingworx.com. I really appreciate you being on the show. I had a great time. It was such an awesome difference. We had Robert Scoble on, and he sort of put on the Snapchat glasses and HoloLens, and it was sort of like the virtual reality show with lots of gadgets. This felt very sort of practical, something you can do today. So I really appreciate that. Neal, thanks for joining. It was great having you. And,
yeah, thanks for having me.
I just want to say that if you like it, come back. We're back every week, 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern, for another Coffee with Mr. IoT next week. And if you missed any part of today's conversation or past episodes, come check it out on my YouTube channel. We'll have all the shows there. With that, goodbye, everyone. Thank you.